This is
Positively
Hygiene with your host, Amber Lovatos,
Amy Prenti,
and Angela Doe.
Listen on as we dive into the positive of dental hygiene. We're going to talk today about getting raises, which I've never asked for a raise. I have just recently renegotiated a bunch of deals. And I'll say my main strategy for deals is to go into a deal with a willingness to lose the deal. Amy was saying she feels like I know my worth. I think so too. But the reason I go, for the most part, not always, the reason I go into a deal, willingness to lose that deal, is because I feel it helps me take out the fear of the deal. When I go into a deal with fear, with thinking like, oh my gosh, I absolutely need this, I'm going to like undervalue myself or undersell myself or ask for less money, then I end up with a deal that I am not happy with. On the other side of things, when I also know that I've done a good job is when I send them a number and they don't automatically say yes, and they come back and try to renegotiate, it makes me feel like, okay, I didn't undervalue myself. And so many times I have been in situations where I have accepted less pay than I wanted to get paid. I have accepted less for a deal, or I didn't like the amount of work going to the deal, but because I was just like such a people pleaser, I would say yes. And then ultimately it would hurt my performance because I wasn't happy. I think the same thing kind of relates in dentistry and clinical hygiene.
Yeah, I like going in with that mindset because it does limit yourself in different ways. So I think that having that mindset definitely like frees you. And I'm going through it now with some things. And so it's not easy to have that mindset for sure. I feel like it's a learned tactic to do. Hopefully I'll be a pro at it like you in the meantime.
I don't know that I'm a pro, but
I think it's an important thing, and this episode is going to be very important because for those who are practicing clinical and see themselves practicing clinical for the foreseeable future, the hygiene rate of hourly pay has drastically changed in the past 5 years. I think more so than any other time frame. I don't know if it was just COVID, and now there's just a shortage of hygienists. But I know I can tell you, I don't want to disclose what I get paid now, but when I had started, my first job was $37 an hour in 2018. Now that was in Connecticut, so of course different locations. When I came down here originally was in the 40s. I now make over $20 higher than when I first started 5 years ago.
wow.
So that's almost like $4 a year. It didn't grow in that $4 each year. But if you're not, I guess that's the one step that you need to take into consideration if you are about to ask for a raise, is you should know the average rate of entry level pay around you, and then the average rate of other hygienists too. And I know we've done on our pages a couple of times where we'll take polls and ask about, what's your hourly rate? We block names and we just kind of divvy it up by state. And in states like Texas, that's tough. Austin versus Dallas, it's all going to pay less. Odessa, it's always it's going to be different. But it's important to know what others are getting paid around you, because something that was actually heartbreaking for me doing this poll, I was able to see a hygienist that was a previous coworker of mine in Connecticut who is about to retire. Her daughters are both in college. She's reaching the end of her career, making less than new grads in that same state.
Wow.
And I bet you she didn't know.
Yeah.
So if you first have to figure out what's a fair number that you want to ask for, and then you need to have the attributes to back it up for what value you're bringing to accommodate that higher rate,
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one office I started at, and it was, I think, lower than what I wanted or expected. And they printed up proof. They printed up lots of documents no, this is the average rate in your area. But like you said, it could be a wide range. But of course, they wanted to match the lowest. And it was really, really hard. I mean, I took the job. I took the job for different reasons. And I ended up getting frequent raises, So soon I was surpassed what I wanted to start with. So that's something to consider when you're starting a job. When are my raises? When are my reviews going to be? When am I going to be evaluated? Because I know people that haven't had it in years. And I feel at least what I'm used to, and I feel like that's the norm, that it should be yearly. And then how much is that raise? And maybe they don't give you a raise, but maybe they add on benefits that would equate to being $1 or $2 more.
I'll say that's kind of for when I taught at dental school. I got paid lower amount, but I got benefits like insurance and retirement and all these things. And I couldn't like necessarily negotiate my pay, but I was able to negotiate for an extra day. Like instead of being 4 days a week, I wanted to be 5 days a week. And I was able to negotiate for that 1 year, which really worked out because in the following year, if I wasn't full time, I wouldn't have qualified for the student loan forgiveness program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There are different things that you could negotiate for.
I think that's what I learned from you. The flexibility of negotiating, whether in clinical or outside of clinical, like be creative. Nothing is off the table. Nothing is taboo. Present it. At least the only thing they can do is say no, but at least you can have that discussion and see if it's even an option.
And I think that's a luxury of dentistry that doesn't exist in medicine, because in medicine, you're working for a corporate hospital. It's, these are PTO 2 days off or 2 weeks off per year. These are our blackout dates, like take it or leave it. Dentistry, it's a smaller family. So there's going to be, I know my first job, they had asked me if I planned on taking the medical benefits. And I was like, no, I'm on my husband's insurance plan. And they said, okay, we'll give you $1 more per hour then.
That's so nice.
Yeah. But then,
give me 2. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I was like, okay, it's $1. Like, I don't know. But then that was kind of interesting because that was the first time I ever worked at a job that could just do that, because everything else, I mean, I worked for like Abercrombie and Fitch for 8 years, like they didn't care if I was using their medical or not. So like that was pretty cool just to see that uniqueness of dentistry play out that way. My best friend from Connecticut, Lindsay, too, from Hygiene School, she was she went to a new office recently, I think about a year ago. And one of the things she negotiated, she has a lot to offer. She's a hygienist, also a myofunctional therapist.
Nice.
And she went on to a different office and she negotiated that into her package. She said, I want 3 or 4 weeks off per year paid.
Wow.
And they gave it to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing to be creative, because some hygienists I've been hearing like they don't get that much paid time off, or it has to be at the discretion of when the dentist has time off, which I'm not for that at all. Or other benefits, maybe paying for your CEs or paying for your dues, or scrubs or something, There's different things you can mix and match with if it's not going to be the dollar, although we like the dollar.
This is a good valid points. I don't necessarily do that. I do that in social media though. I do that with, okay, you want to pay me X amount, but maybe I want $1,500 and they want me to do a post and 3 stories, and I will come back with, how about we do 1 post and a story, right? Try to negotiate like that way instead of be like, no, this doesn't work for me. Like figuring out, or maybe I wanted like $2,000 or something. I don't know. Like we try to negotiate maybe not the amount, but the deliverables for that amount. What are you asking of me for that? I know some people, when they're asking for raises or taking on jobs, they'll say like, hey, for every fluoride that I sell, I get X amount of money. So, okay, you can't guarantee to pay me a certain amount per hour, but you can do a certain amount. Okay, do that amount. And then you yourself are then responsible for selling that fluoride or that oral cancer screening or whatever it is, that occlusal guard, and then you get extra money that way.
And I know some people who have asked for raises, they go in with like their production numbers.
Yeah.
And you have the right to see those. I've also heard stories where they're like, oh, well, the doctor won't let me see my production numbers. No, you're allowed to see them. And then from there, if your production so start tracking it. If you haven't already, start tracking it. So that you can print it out as long as you leave it at work, because if there's personal information, you don't want to take it out of work. But start tracking it. So that way you have physical proof that, hey, I'm producing a fourth more, a third, half more, I deserve this raise, pretty much. If you have to justify, at least you have something to stand behind.
We talked about this in another episode, but if you speak Spanish or speak another language and you find that they're pulling you from your patient to go and interpret, then bring that data, like keep track of, okay, this many times this last month, I was taken from my patient to go and interpret for the phone or interpret for the doctor or for the other hygienist. I was able to sell this many plans to this many people who were Spanish speakers, specifically because you spoke their languages, and bringing those dollar amounts in and proving, hey, this is not just me having a skill that I use with my patient, but this is another role that I am bringing to the office that is taking from my additional duties that I am doing, but taking away from my clinical time with my patients. A book recommendation that I think everybody should read or listen to, the audiobook is really good, is called We Should All Be Millionaires. It is fantastic, fantastic book, specifically for women. But I'm sure if you're a man, you can listen to it and get some snippets from it too. I love the mindset of money that she has, and how she deals with business dealings, and getting out of kind of like our mentality. Sometimes we have this fear of, am I worth more? Is it bad to make money? I think maybe I come from a background where I grew up pretty poor, and sometimes you feel kind of guilty like to have money,
You're getting into that mindset, and then I feel like the book sort of tells you why we've been in this mindset and why we're feeling guilty. It wasn't that long ago. I remember listening to it, and it wasn't that long ago that women could start making their own money and having lots of values, working up their way in the ladder. And so it's like, man, this is still pretty fresh, and we're having to make the way for our children now, so that they can help. I mean, have boys, but so they can have a voice and feel, and feel they have worth and know it's okay to ask for your value.
Yeah, I think we have maybe this, sometimes we have trauma we carry with us and we don't even realize it. My dad grew up really, really poor, and he said he knows what it is to be hungry. And because of that, he's always wanting to, eat. And so that has a impact on like his health, obviously. There's this psychological like impact to like why he's overweight, why he overindulges, because in his mind, like there's this scarcity mindset of food related back to knowing what it is to be hungry. But he always says that he always wants to buy food for people or feed people because he feels like everybody's kind of suffering that same way. And so I feel the same way about money. Like growing up not having money, I tend to have a scarcity mindset related to money. Like I need to take any deal and every opportunity because if I don't, then I'm not going to have money. And that's not true. That is not true. I'm learning to be better about it now. I'm learning to say no. I'm learning to trust that things will come to me. Right. But that can be a hard thing to get out of.
It can. And I also think one thing when you're working clinical, and I actually had this conversation once with a patient who was a PA in a hospital, and she said, I think I undersold myself when I took my first job. I was just excited to work and I didn't really I don't feel like I could have got as much as I wanted to get. And I said, what helps me in dentistry, at least, we provide our own income. Like we make our own money. It's our money that our hands are making this cash.
Producers.
What we're asking for, so we're producers. So what we're asking for isn't money from a corporation. Hey, I'm a cashier. Nothing against cashiers, but hey, I'm a cashier. Can you pay me this much to do something AI can do? This is, you are asking and fighting and advocating for how much of your own money you want to keep.
Yeah.
That's the way, that's the mentality I go into it looking, because I am producing, say $130 an hour. Okay. There's formulas out there that say a hygienist should take home a third of what she produces hourly.
Yeah.
And I think I agreed. I always agreed with that statement. And I always, okay, that makes sense. So the idea is a third of it goes to the hygienist, a third of it goes to covering supplies, maintenance, things like that. And a third of it goes to the practice to cover marketing and, new instrument, covering PTO, things like that, benefits. So it all makes sense. You can't take 100% of what you're producing. Of course, that makes no sense. But I liked this mentality until years went on and I started to realize the reimbursement rate for pro fees is not going up.
No.
So then how are we expected to to plateau? That's not fair to us. We're not the ones, we don't have any leverage in reaching out to the insurance company fighting for our rates to go up, and we're not the ones negotiating these contracts. So then why should our hourly rate rest on that? So then there's this book out there, $1 Million Dentistry. You can research. I think it's a short book. I only read the hygiene chapter. The doctor that I work with had asked me to read it because he really, everything I'm about to say, it was views that we share. And he was one telling me hygienists bring so much value to a practice aside from the hourly production. And he was the one, we talked about insurance, like reimbursement rates and how it's not fair. And eventually he wants to go fee for service where, people buy a membership fee. Insurance is cut out of the picture completely. He wants to drop all insurances just because not only are they out there trying to only pay $40 for a pro fee, they're cutting those fees as years go on. Yeah. They're trying to shave off dollars every year. So eventually we'll be no different than the hospitals.
So what's interesting is that for medicine, those fees go up, but for dentistry, those fees haven't changed since they placed those codes into place. Like the percentages of like, oh, we're 100% prevention, 80%, crown or 50% crown. Like those things haven't changed in the decades that those things were created, which is crazy, right? That's
it's
ridiculous.
Just evil.
Yeah.
So we can't allow so that's when I started to steer clear of you should get a third of your hourly income, because I say, no, we have so much more value. And this is how the doctor I work with in the $1 Million Dentistry author feel, is that a hygienist has such a rapport with her or his patients. And if there's treatment that's recommended, the hygienist taking an intraoral photograph of the treatment and being able to speak with the patient saying why this is important and why they need it. If that patient goes on to book that treatment, a lot of times it's because of the hygienist. So no, the hygienist isn't the one producing that thousands of dollars implant, but the wheels start moving from that hygienist. That's the value that they brought. So I know his philosophy is that a hygienist should receive 1% of the treatment that the dentist is doing, so that there's that incentive to back the pre-diagnosed treatment on a treatment plan.
I like that.
Yeah, which is cool.
That's a new thought that I've heard.
Yeah. But so we don't do that. I do feel I am well compensated for my value in the practice that I'm in. But it's because it's beyond flicking and scaling and polishing. It goes so much farther beyond that. And hygienists are the ones that patients will like to go see. I've heard, I've had patients leave practices to come to see me at a different practice. I've had patients say, like, they've told the doctor I work with, if you ever lose her, I'm getting out of here. Like, don't you ever get rid of her. And he's like, she's not going anywhere. And I think that there's so much value beyond our numerical production value.
I was talking to a dentist and recently about, hygienists leaving dentistry and whatever. And I was like, I think we don't talk a lot about the other side of things, and which I hear from you is feeling appreciated. A lot of times you'll stay at a practice just because you appreciate how they are, you appreciate the flexibility. You've talked about how you like, how chill your office is, right? There are other benefits to working at a place that aren't necessarily monetary. For me, I really like to be heard. And I told the doctor, hey, you don't have to agree with me on a treatment plan, but I want you to at least hear my point of view so that I don't feel like I'm just being shut out of my patient's care.
Yeah, that's why I love my last practice and why I was there for so long, is because I felt collaborative with the dentist, that he listened to me and valued my opinion and my time with the patient. And at the same time, I had flexibility with my schedule if I needed to make it to my kid's event, or something came up last minute. He didn't make me feel guilty that I had to skip out, or it's more what can I do, to help you make it.
And Amber, it was interesting what you brought up before about the incentive plan. So I do know there's a lot of practices that do that. And I know traditionally what I've seen is sealants, whitening, occlusal guards,
SDF. I've seen the oral cancer screening device, when they use a device on that, just the an extra separate fee.
Lasers sometimes.
Lasers sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, and on production, I've seen anywhere from 3 to 5% production from SRPs, because I do think there's value in that. If you're producing more for an hour, so if I go in to this nitty gritty SRP, I'd like to think that I'm getting paid more that hour than if I were doing a simple pro fee. I do think that I'd like to get paid for the work that I'm putting out there.
My friend, she gets paid a certain amount per hour, and then they have a certain goal. If they reach that goal, they get a bonus past that goal.
And is it the office goal or is that?
I think they have individual goals and an office goal.
Okay. I know we have a daily production goal. If we make it, we pick poker chips from a bag the next day. Yeah, it's really cool. So we pick poker chips and it's any, like, so there's all different dollar amounts. I don't want to give away his secret. So there's all different dollar amounts and you just, you blindly pick. And then if you make goal 2 days in a row, that next day we pick 2 times and he does it up to 5 times.
Oh.
So the cheapest chip in there, I'll say, is $10.
Okay.
So it's
coffee.
Good, yeah. So it's good substantial amounts,
And it's
so
fun too. It's what it brings
so
up.
Fun.
Atmosphere and morale.
And we all celebrate each other too. Like if someone gets like one of the higher chips, everyone's like, yeah.
I think that just goes back to like feeling appreciated, right? And I know that we've had some dentists who listen to our episode, like our show. I hope that you get from this is that like we want you to succeed. We want the practice to succeed. And we want to feel valued and heard. And valued does not always equate to money. Obviously, money matters, right? Like if I can't pay my bills, then that's not going to work. But at the end of the day,
pay for my gas.
Yeah, I work for a nonprofit and we make $40 an hour, which in Houston, we can make $55 an hour. And I'm making $40 an hour. I do it because I like it. I do it because I love the people I work with. I do it because I love the work that we do, because I feel respected and because I feel heard. I do love that I don't get benefits because I don't work full time. But for me, that's all I need. I drive an hour each way because I love how I feel when I'm there.
All right, I got something fun. Ready?
Okay.
I'm going to come up with 3 things. I'm not going to improv, so I'm going to think of these as I'm talking, which is going to be probably interesting. So I have 3 things I'm going to ask you both. I want to hear your opinions. Would you sacrifice money off of your hourly rate for a shorter commute?
Yes.
Depends how much shorter.
Or how much?
But I don't depend fully on my income from clinical.
If you did, so clinical hygiene, you just have a full-time job.
If I could still,
would you accept $10 more an hour than the average for an hour commute?
$10 is a lot. $10 is a lot.
But time is money too.
2 hours a day. That's a lot. 2 hours away from your kids each day.
I'm gonna say no.
So you're saying I would be getting $80 a day more, $10 an hour, $10 per. Oh my gosh, $80 a day is a lot. It's a lot of money. Yeah, I guess so. Because then it's 40 hours. $40 per those 2 hours.
Well, maybe, because then maybe you only need to work 3 days instead of 5.
That's true. But if it was just like $1 or $2, nah, I
look at us. What are the variables?
It's not black and white.
This is a yes or no question,
That's
Amber.
what Amy had in mind, and we're all like, but what about this? What about this?
This is why I do polls, okay? That's a button.
Next question, Amy. Next question.
Now, would you accept more money, or would you accept less money, but the office is more flexible, meaning like time off was never a question? Is that worth $5 extra a month to lose, or $5 extra per hour to lose because an office is
the
flexible?
numbers amount, that's throwing me off.
Those are big numbers.
Those big numbers. I mean, would I accept less money, generally speaking, if the office was more flexible? Yes.
Okay. So that
I don't know, about $5 an hour. I mean, maybe, because right now I make $15 an hour less than
the average.
average.
I did that. I feel like what I'm making in Peto is comparable, but I was making less than other hygienists because I knew I had that flexibility in time.
But again, I'm making $15 an hour less than everywhere else, but I don't depend on that income.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a factor. But I think generally speaking, yes, because could I go and work at a dental office across the street from me for more money? I could, yet I choose to drive an hour each way because I'm happy at the other location, because I'm happy about the work that we do.
What's your third question, Amy?
What's your third question?
So this one, I won't name drop, but this is a realistic situation in Texas. But this one does have the number attached to it because I know people that have worked in these environments. Now, would you get paid it's about maybe $15 more per hour to see about 15 to 20 adult prophies per day?
No, I would take less money for an hour patient. And that's not what I get right now. It's not, because I work in public health. But yeah, I would take less money for more time.
I feel like I'm doing that already. I mean, not for more money, not for $15 more, but and then some are adults, because we see all the way through college. So some are adults. But
that's not that adult. That adult is not.
But I'm not taking X-rays.
That adult is not the same as my perio public health adults.
She said pro fees though.
Yeah, she said pro fees. But my patients in general, like,
they need you. They need the time.
They need the time. That's tough.
Yeah.
Oh, some of these children. I mean, I get what you're saying, Amber.
I'm telling you that like 95% of my patients are perio.
Yeah.
And they're not simple perio.
Yeah. Bonus one.
Bonus one.
Could drama in an office cause you to leave?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Even if it was higher than the average, if you were getting paid higher than the average.
Not worth it.
I'm telling you, I'm driving an hour. Let me tell you this. I'm driving an hour into the city each way to get paid $40 an hour. I don't get an hour per patient. Amy, if you're listening, I wish I could get an hour per patient. Because I love the people that I work with and I love the work that we do.
I like that.
And I almost die crossing the street every single day. Trying to cross. Yeah, because to the parking lot for us, the employee parking lot versus the clinic parking lot, they're not in the same street. So you got to cross the street. And people in Houston, they don't care. They'll run you over. So I risk my life to get paid $15 an hour less. And I drive an hour each way for a better work environment.
Next question. Would you sacrifice $15 an hour and your life to put a priceless smile on people's faces?
Obviously.
And with that, we'll wrap up today's episode.
Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
Join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcast.